In the early 1930s, America was a study in contrasts. Monumental advances in transportation, architecture, and communication were reshaping the country, even while desperate economic conditions were crippling America's communities. On the heels of the stock market crash of October 1929, the nation had plunged into the worst economic crisis in its history, and the decade-long recovery reflected staggering 25% unemployment rates and dramatically increased homelessness. Alabamians suffered through the Depression, actually posting higher unemployment rates than any other southern state. Hope was waning and the statewide situation was grim. As a result of Alabama's 1901 Constitution, which firmly cemented power with the state legislature, local government officials were unable to resolve hometown issues simply or quickly.
The needs of local officials are really not provided for because of the process itself. The process is not conducive for local acts to sail through the process. That process does not work up there. And the other thing about it is that I think that local officials are better suited to determine the local needs.
Local leaders needed some way to regain even a portion of the power, influence, and authority their cities and towns lost with the ratification of the 1901 Constitution. And the immense pressure of the Depression created a climate ripe for municipal leaders to band together in that effort. In 1935, with the advice and help of Governor Bibb Graves, who was sympathetic to the plight of cities and towns, the newly formed Alabama League of Municipalities gained a toehold in the rugged terrain of Alabama politics, as well as an executive director whose magnetism would define the organization for decades. And so, with a modest grant from the predecessor to the National League of Cities, known as the American Municipal League, Ed Reed, a charismatic, energetic young man with a background in journalism and government, became the Alabama League's first executive director, a position he would hold for the next 30 years.
Ed Reed was quite a promoter. He was very active. It was a one-man show. He didn't have anybody to help him much. He traveled all over the state.
Described as a ball of fire and a go-getter when he was recommended to the 24 members of the newly formed organization, Reed was quickly defined by his unbridled energy, dynamic personality, and political savvy. He aggressively and single-mindedly pursued the interest of the League, garnering respect at both the state and national levels.
We got along real good. He was a unique person too, and but we had a good working relationship. He was a spiffy dresser, and I'm just like him. We don't like no dead colors.
As a former newspaper editor, Reed's gift for communication and promotion aided him as he began publishing the organization's goals, findings, and accomplishments in the Alabama Municipal News. Starting with the inaugural issue in 1937, his purpose was to provide accurate information, informed opinions, and pragmatic advice for running towns and cities, the principle that still guides the League's official monthly publication, the Alabama Municipal Journal. Within 15 years of its inception, the Alabama League would rate in the top 5 in the nation, and Reed was cited by the American Municipal Association as one of the 5 best possible sources of information on local government. In 1946, after moving office locations several times within downtown Montgomery, Reed signed a lease on a small 7-room shotgun-style building a few blocks from the Capitol at 24 South Hull Street. Through the late 1940s and early 1950s, under the leadership of Ed Reed, the Alabama League of Municipalities focused on helping its membership create more stable, solvent, and seamless operations while influencing key legislation. Just as importantly, the League facilitated quick, reliable communication and interaction between municipal officials and state and federal lawmakers. Until his untimely death from cancer in July 1965, Ed Reed's early fame as a go-getter never diminished. He had attended every legislative session from 1935 to 1965 and was voted most effective lobbyist in the legislature 5 times. During his 30-year tenure, Ed Reed, the trailblazer from Evergreen, earned a nationwide reputation for his expertise in local government issues, and more importantly, he showed municipal leaders that they mattered. When John Watkins assumed the duties of executive director following the death of Ed Reed in 1965, he was well prepared. For almost 10 years, he had been an integral part of the Alabama League of Municipalities while serving as league counsel and staff attorney. He had learned firsthand about the growing and changing needs of the towns and the cities the league represented. The administrative and leadership skills he gained working with Reed, in addition to his previous experience as Prattville's city manager and as a municipal judge, served him well. Watkins' quiet demeanor and soft-spoken gentility would steer the league successfully through times of progress, upheaval, and alteration.
John Watkins was a go-getter. He was a hard-working fellow. He had the feeling of the importance of the league to municipalities. He realized that the cities and towns, small towns like Berry, like Fayette, it didn't have the money to go out and pay for good advice.
To be able to do that and to be able to handle the responsibilities that come with a job working for the league, you have to know how to deal with people, and you have to really have a good general consensus of everything that's going on. And John Watkins was the type of leader that was not a forceful leader. His number one thing was, if you always do what's right for the membership and the league, the rest will take care of itself. Don't ever worry about anybody criticizing you for doing what's best for the organization. And I think that epitomizes John Watkins.
In September of 1968, Watkins purchased lots 37 and 38 in downtown Montgomery on the corner of Adams Avenue and Bainbridge Street, within shouting distance of the Alabama Capitol building. For $60,000, the league had made the first step toward creating a facility equal to the demands of an increasingly urbanized state.
We got some more staff, and it just worked out great. And it was like being in a mansion coming off of 24 South Hub.
While overseeing the construction and opening of the league's new headquarters, Watkins was also shepherding important legislation affecting municipal growth through the Alabama House and Senate.
We have about 4 state shared revenues that come to our municipalities, but they're meager compared to what other states provide their cities and towns. Alabama's probably one of the leaders in the nation of being able to finance their own operations, that is, with local revenues. We've come to be quite dependent on federal assistance, and if the federal assistance is reduced, some changes are going to have to be made, because we're right on the edge of red and black.
With the introduction of the Municipal Workers' Compensation Fund in 1976, John Watkins and his team found another way to fortify Alabama's cities and towns.
We already have a workman's compensation pool that we've had for 7 or 8 years. It's working real well for the municipalities, saved the municipalities of the state a tremendous amount of money. The legislature passed a law that required cities to have workers' compensation coverage. A number of our cities weren't sure what they were going to do. He knew that the Texas League had set up a pool operation for their cities for workers' comp purposes, and he had different people come in, work together, and we created the Municipal Workers' Compensation Fund, which I'm happy to say over the years has saved cities millions of dollars in premiums. It's been hopefully provided excellent coverage. It's protected their interest and been a very sound organization for them. It served good purposes in providing insurance for those cities, but the other thing it did, it served to be a revenue producer for the league, to provide additional revenues for the operation of the league for service fees for us managing the Workers' Compensation Fund. And as a result, the league's been able to add many, many more programs and services because we had a funding source to provide funding.
As the 1970s came to a close, the league continued to crusade for municipalities' financial security and self-determining capabilities.
The thing John should get credit for is when we were getting a lot of the oil and gas revenues from the royalties from the wells and the leasing rights of those offshore drilling operations. The governor decided to pass a constitutional amendment, which the people ratified, that actually put that money in a trust fund that they couldn't touch. The legislature couldn't go get at it and so forth. We went to work. This was toward the end of John's tenure as league director, probably about 85, 86, somewhere along there. We went to work with the legislature, and the county's doing the same thing to try to get a law that would provide that a certain portion of the interest derived from the investments of that money would go to cities and towns. We had a lot of negotiations, a lot of work. We finally came up with saying that if any year 60%, in any year, if the interest on the money generated $60 million, the cities would get 10% and the counties get 10%. We were successful in getting that passed by the legislature, and it was provided that cities, each city got a portion, a base portion, and then the rest was divided on population, so everybody gets some. But we made it unique in the fact that we decided that for the city's share, that it had to be used for capital purposes. That way, if it later came where that money wasn't coming in, the cities weren't in a hole trying to make it up in their budgets.
On that victorious note, John Watkins retired from the Alabama League of Municipalities in May 1986 after 30 years of service. During his tenure as executive director, he had written what became standard reference books for Alabama's municipal officials. He also served 2 terms on the board of directors of the National League of Cities.
Municipalities serve the people.
Right.
The municipality, I would like to think most people offhand think of a municipality as being a separate entity, a separate corporation, which it is. But a municipality is the people in the community, and it belongs to the people. And any additional cost for the services rendered by the municipality have to be borne by the people. Sure. Otherwise, you don't get the service. There's no way to provide it.
He was an excellent leader. He always defended the league, and that was the last thing on his mind as the league after he retired. We'd have conversations about every week or 2 weeks. He'd call me up on the phone. He would come by the league. We'd go to lunch every so often, and it was all finding out what's doing, can I help anyway, you know, is that. The league, he was totally proud of this organization and what it stood for, and hopefully we've continued that tradition.
Watkins passed the reins of the league to Perry Rockmore Jr., whom he had hand-selected from the 1973 University of Alabama School of Law graduating class to be the league's staff attorney. During the 12 years they worked together, Watkins became an influential mentor for Rockmore, both professionally and personally. Like his mentor John Watkins, Rockmore found that preparedness, professionalism, and a genuine stake in the fortunes and fates of the league's cities and towns made his a voice that was heard and heeded by the Alabama legislature.
You've been working some with the legislature. I just want to touch on this momentarily here. All this past year, am I right?
Right. I work in the office during the week when the legislature is not in session. In those days they're not in session, answering legal questions for the municipalities, the officials, and city clerks and so forth around the state. When the legislature is in session, I spend a lot of time down there attending committee meetings and keeping up with the flow of legislation.
And what's going on.
And so forth.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break right now.
When Rockmore assumed command in 1986 following Watkins' retirement, he faced a state and nation considerably different from what his predecessors had encountered.
John spent a lot of time with me talking about, you know, all the things about the league that I didn't know, which a lot of it I knew, but certain things I didn't because I wasn't involved in that day to day. And when you switch from a position of being an attorney for the league or a lobbyist for the league to something else, then all of a sudden you've got the whole picture in front of you, and you have to balance it out between the time you spent with this, that, and the other. And he was very good about giving me the time to learn those things and helping me so that I'd be prepared when that decision was made to succeed in him. Big steps to follow.
Municipal governments, their hands already full from coping with the increasing number of federal and state mandates that altered their operations, faced further complications in the 1980s, a time when obtaining liability insurance proved elusive. To resolve the problem, Rockmore and several other municipal officials founded the Alabama Municipal Insurance Corporation, or AMIC, in 1989.
We had to come up with a new mechanism. The Alabama State Bar had created a mutual insurance company, which is an actual insurance company where the members that are in it own a portion of the company. And it was decided that that would be the route we needed to take in our state. To get that started, we had to have a validation case in the court to tell us that we could do what we were doing, and it took about 9 months. Supreme Court came out. In fact, we got word when we just arrived in Birmingham for a convention that the Supreme Court had said that we had our authority. So by that, we were able to have the legal authority to set up the mechanism for what is now AMIC.
I feel like that the 10 years that I was leading the company, we put the company in position so that when the hard market came back, insurance was available to our municipalities. So we were in position to furnish the needs of the cities, and that was one of the things we accomplished, was to have the capital structure to do this.
In the early 1990s, upon Rockmore's advice, the League's board of directors voted to triple the size of its headquarters building from 7,500 square feet to 22,000. The building expansion was completed in 1992, and its additional office space has since allowed for hiring more employees and accommodating updated technology. Another way Rockmore aimed to save time and money for member municipalities was by helping to create more effective municipal leaders.
That if we want to improve this country, we have to do it one community at a time. And that's basically what we do with the Alabama League of Municipalities, with the National League of Cities. As elected officials, we learn to do what we do better, and in turn, that builds a stronger nation, one community at a time.
The League's Certified Municipal Official Training Program, which was only the second such program in the United States, was established in 1994.
One of the goals when I became director in '86, I noticed that we had all kinds of educational programs for clerks, for administrators, for revenue officers, zoning and planning officials, but there was never much for the elected official, the mayors and the council members. The state of Georgia at their league set up a training program for elected mayors and council members. I decided that was something we needed to do, and we set up a subcommittee here at the league of officials in our organization, subcommittee of members of the executive committee, and they studied it. We did surveys. We got the members to tell whether they were interested, whether they would like it or not, and so forth. Make a long story short, we created the CMO, Certified Municipal Official Program, where if any official got credit hours, 40 credit hours, they'd be a basic certified municipal official. It was so popular after the first rounds, first 2 or 3 years, that those folks that completed the 40 wanted more, so we created an advanced program, and now we've even got a continuing program. One of the most successful programs we've ever had.
And I want to say that, yes, I am very proud of the fact that I have been the speaker at this ceremony since its inception. And it's a very, very outstanding program. I only wish that when I was first elected as Decatur City Council in 1968, that I could have had the training at that time. And if so, I might have been running for governor. God forbid.
The power of pooling resources and standing together infuses one of the League's most recent undertakings, the Alabama Municipal Funding Corporation. Founded only a few years ago, this program empowers member municipalities to obtain funding that would otherwise be beyond their grasp and can be used for virtually any municipal project.
We asked the board, took it to them, all right, y'all have asked us to look into it, here's what we found. And they decided to create a separate corporation called the Alabama Municipal Funding Corporation, or AMFund for short. And that's how we got into the bonding business, with all of that, to have bonds that could be available under certain circumstances for cities. It's not something that every city can take advantage of. It's not something that's the best deal for every city. We always tell our cities, look at this, compare it to what's out there. If it's the best deal for you, then we hope you go with us.
It's just extremely easy to apply, easy to receive, and easy to pay back.
The League's founding fathers courageously pursued their goal to empower municipal government during a formative time in Alabama's history. 75 years later, the Alabama League of Municipalities remains unwavering in this goal, continuing to enable local government to promote the welfare of our citizens and serve all the people of our great state.
So the Alabama League of Municipalities over the last 75 years has touched the lives of so many people. And the League is not just an association, but it is a training institution for those of us who are mayors. It enables us to come together and first learn from each other, because no need of reinventing the wheel when another mayor or council person has tried this approach or this technique and it worked for them. So you could use it, you can make it applicable to your situation in your particular case. And also the League is just a storehouse of information, resource, technology, and most of all, knowledge about municipal government.
I see the League doing what it's always done, that's adapting to deal with the world in which they find themselves. As long as they do that, they'll be successful.
Happy 75th anniversary to my Alabama League of Municipalities.